So Damien, we're here in Newstead, come all the way from Melbourne. I just want to start, man, like, how do you come up with something as niche as power diaries? Like, where does this come from?
It came from genuine need.
Oh, right.
So my wife and I were both psychologists, right? And we had started a private practice. We had ideas of how we wanted that private practice to run, and it was different to what was being done at the time. We wanted to grow a practice that was scalable and was efficient, and that didn't ultimately require us to be the people seeing clients all the time. So we wanted to be able to sort of grow it, but not be the only generators of income, you know, for that, because you can get then tied to your health business. And so we assumed that there would be great software. That was
the naivety.
The naivety, exactly. And we had a number of things that we were looking for. Again, assumed that that was going to be just easy to find. And we went through and tried different platforms that were out at the time. We even paid an advance paid, on one platform that people had recommended, and we just was so disappointed with what it could do, and thought, there is a need here. And a long story short, then partnered up with my brother Paul, who's a co-founder, and he had a very strong technology background, and he had built a company that was providing IT services to small and medium-sized businesses. And he'd recently sold that to Telstra, so that had become, and it was just the right timing where I thought, he understands small and medium businesses, which is what most health practices are. And I understand the psychology side of things and what, really we need to run a good health practice. And so I thought, I'll just ask him, because I knew that he was just at a time where he didn't have another project on the go, and he'd just finished with that. And he had a look at it and thought, this is a great idea. He saw and so it just started out with him and I, and we ran it out of our psychology practice in. So he was in Melbourne. I was just out of Melbourne, and I literally put a phone, a power diary phone on the desk of our receptionist for the psychology practice, and said, like, if that rings, just answer it with power diary.
Yeah,
and that's how it started.
Wild. So, like, you serviced your own business first, and then how did it grow from there? Like,
so we had a few customers sort of early on from the very sort of start of it, and it was less than 10 or so, and then we got a lot of word of mouth that would just sort of happen, that people would kind of talk about it and whatnot, and then we started taking out, like, very, very small scale ads, right? So we do a little bit of Google advertising. I think we ran one ad in the one of the journals, or one of the professional journals. So I think at that time it might have been one of the psychology association or society, and a print ad.
Oh, right.
This is old school. This is going back.
Well, what era is this? Like, so you've gone from you've identified the need, and you've started power diaries, and now other people are hearing about it. What
so this is back in 2011, somewhere around there.
Yep.
And then over the next few years, we were very product focused. So we were focused on just building out the system. So for a long time, it was Paul. We hired another developer, myself, and then we eventually had a support person to help, because I was doing all the support and Paul was doing all the development originally, and I'd do the marketing and things as well, and do sales. So I'd do demonstrations. So I'd see clients, because I was a practicing psychologist. So
all of the hats.
We had, it was busy, but we had no idea if it would work. Right? It was let's just see, and we talked to other psychologists about what issues they had. And we'd build out the tools and build out the platform to really meet those needs. And it didn't take long before it wasn't just psychologists. We started to notice other industries were saying, well, hang on, for physiotherapy and osteopathy and massage and speech, bit by bit, people were like, well, it's the same. And we realized it's the same core needs. And then, from then on, it just sort of grew organically. And eventually we built out more of a team. We had a few more support people. It was years and years before we had any form of like marketing person like I was doing it, and I'm not a skilled marketer right, at all. So let's not live under any illusions here. Even when we're doing our ads, print ads in magazines, initially I was designing them on some
Word.
it's not far off that. And then one of our support people that started in the very early days, he's still with us actually. He had a bit of Photoshop experience, and so he would Photoshop. It really did start from true kind of grassroots, very humble beginnings. We didn't have any investment. We didn't have any seed money, and any investors. We still don't. We've kept away from that the whole time. So we're what's called bootstrapped. So we've grown it, and it was years and years. It was in fact embarrassingly late at the point that we decided, hey, we really should get a proper marketing person to help, and we did, and of course that's good. You get the message across better.
Yeah,
when
sure.
you've got the right people doing it.
I think though, because it's awesome that you were able to grow so large before having to get to something like that. Like your product obviously fulfills such an integral need.
Yeah,
and that there was nothing else there.
Yeah. It has been. There's been lots of really pleasant surprises along the way like that. How much of our growth, and still to this day, comes from word of mouth. And people just talking to their colleagues about it and talking about it on their own Facebook groups and things, and they'll say, "Hey, I use this," and then we find that people start using it, and that organic, I guess it's been affirming that idea of just focus on working out what's needed, what's going to make life easier for practitioners and be good for patients. Build that and get it out there, get the feedback, improve it, and keep going. And that's really been the not so secret component to how Paradori has sort of grown over the years.
Was there you're in 7 countries and all this kind of stuff? How quickly did it grow to that stage? So once you got to sort of 2-part question, how quickly did it grow to okay, we're going global? And was there a hockey stick moment where things just got mental?
We've had, I think the sexiest story to tell is to say, we cracked the code and all of a sudden it just went crazy, right? But the truth of it is, it actually wasn't, right? We've had steady, consistent, good growth year after year after year after year, and that in some ways it's not as exciting, right, as a story to tell, right? When you see that, okay, we worked out there's one thing that everyone wanted and then it just went crazy. But actually it's been great because it's built on really sort of solid foundations, and we've learned and continue to learn, as we go. And then that sort of organic growth that's happened where people are talking to other people about it, and then we get these sort of surprises. And so, say getting into, so we started out as an Australian company, and originally started with the .com.au. That sort of shows where our thinking was at, right? So we didn't even own the .com at that stage. And then what happened is we noticed that we were getting traffic and we were getting people sign up from initially the UK, right? And we were thinking, well, why we've got people from the UK signing up to a very clearly Australian platform? What's that about? And so we talk to them, and I'd do the demos in those days, and so I'd be up at crazy hours, meeting with these and doing demonstrations, learning about their business. And what we worked out is that the same needs that people in Australia have, that we'd had ourselves, that was applied to the UK as well. And so we started getting traffic. So from there, we put some people locally in the UK. So we always believe in providing local support to local people. So if we're in a country that we're servicing, we ideally like to have the support team servicing those people be from that area, because then they understand the nuances, and they understand what's needed. So that was the first kind of really nice surprise to see. Oh, okay, the UK, but then on the other hand, you sort of think, well, Australia, UK are perhaps more culturally consistent and blah blah blah. But then we started noticing the same thing happening in the US and Canada, and we started getting people signing up and utilizing the platform. And at that stage, all our infrastructure, everything was in Australia as well, so it wasn't and that just it grew. And again we had the same thing. We thought, why are they? Surely the US is extremely well serviced, right?
Yeah.
And then when we started looking at it, we realized we're getting the same feedback, where customers were saying, well, your platform does this and this and this, and it's done, the idea of sort of developing software that really comes from the practitioner's perspective, because that's really how it's like. Obviously it started with my wife and I's view, but then we really involve the customers in a lot of, every single like feature request or comment or something we document, and it gets tracked in a system. So we're always like very tuned to what practitioners genuinely are asking for. And that's often, it's a different approach than a company that might get a whole lot of venture capital or something. Be started by some tech guys and some finance guys, or women, like with but the approach of it, coming at it from a different angle. Or you see banks, have got in the game where you've got ex-bankers and things running. It's fine, but it's a different perspective. And I think where where we come from is very much that practitioner, and that resonated with practitioners. And then that's where once we sort of saw, hey, there's potential here, then we start fine-tuning the product for those markets and make sure that we're attending to other needs that maybe we hadn't thought of because it wasn't originally, to where we are now, where each of those key markets are part of the story. And it's been it wasn't how we set out. Like I'm always ambitious and adventurous. I like seeing where you can take something. Like I enjoy it. So it's not out of character in that sense, but it's not when sit down to say we're going to we literally, like when we first launched, Paul and I, when we were we really had no idea whether anyone would like it, want it, anything at all, and even I remember even Paul and I talking, he goes, well, I don't want to spend a lot of time and just end up building just an awesome software that only suits your practice, right? Which is a very fair, like at the very start, because he's like, it will take a lot of time, and I'm like, no, that's fair. But I said, no, I think the need that we've got, is, but it was untested, unproven theory until we gave it a crack.
Man, that's wild. How do you see healthcare providers leveraging technology in the future? Like this could pertain to you guys specifically, or is there something that healthcare providers like this is going to be the future for these guys?
It's hard. I think it's hard to reliably predict, because the way in which technology evolves is so fast that it'd be very easy to kind of misshoot. So if you were to ask me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have factored AI in, for instance, as much as I would in that answer to now. But looking at where things are now, what we can sort of say very confidently is that there are increasing expectations on practitioners to be accountable, transparent, particularly to third-party billing payers. So if we think about insurance companies that are funding, employers that are funding, even to an extent, some of the registration bodies, the data that each practitioner is required to retain and to be able to prove in terms of how they're practicing, all of that really can only be achieved by leveraging technology. And so we see that side of it. So from an administrative side, it's, I would say almost impossible to run an efficient practice without leveraging, tools like we have. But the other areas that I think have become really overt into focus are the potential of telehealth, right? And that has been amazing, to see that really it got spurred on by COVID, and it, like anything, necessity. And barriers that I would have normally taken 5 to 10 years to break down about using telehealth got resolved in months.
Immediately.
And things like the way your insurance coverage provides for you, across borders and line, things. The Medicare, the way that's sort of set up, and whether you're allowed to provide virtual, none of that existed before, or was extremely limited, right? But you couldn't do it as part of routine practice. So that sort of really catapulted that forward. And even just it became a positive cycle in a way that we had telehealth to build telehealth on our roadmap pre-COVID. When that all hit, we moved that to the very top of the priority, and we built. I think it took us about 10 days, and because we said to customers, we're going to build you like a telehealth platform that's secure, compliant, end-to-end encrypted, meets all the requirements. We're going to get you like a working version of this in 10 days, right? Which was a very,
ambitious.
It was ambitious, and our team did an amazing job. Like they worked around the clock. And we said it's going to be rough, like it's not going to be pretty when we first write. No, the buttons and everything's not going to necessarily be stylistically wonderful. You're not going to be amazed by our design. But at first iteration, it will always be secure, it will work, and it will allow you to just, and we won't charge you for it, right? We'll just get this out. So even that at a very, small level for us, going, we need to get that thing done now, and then get it. And then a lot of other, companies did the same thing, and we saw a lot of video, platforms blew up, really in a positive way. And then it moved, the whole industry moved, and people realized the potential it had. And then there was a whole lot of unexpected outcomes. So patients that would have said, oh, I don't want telehealth, I want face-to-face, I want, we're like, oh, actually, this is pretty good.
Right? I don't have to leave my house.
This
is great.
Right, yeah. Teens, right, getting teens, teens that may not sometimes want to come into a clinic, right? Teens that have, or people that have anxiety and don't struggle to leave the house, let alone sit in a waiting room and all that sort of stuff. Suddenly we're able to get treatment and went, actually, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
People that, if you've got a parent home and they've got a sick child, and before they might have to cancel the appointment they had with their psychologist or with their physiotherapist, whoever they might have been seeing, because they couldn't take the child. All of a sudden, people found ways of delivering that and saying, you stay home, we'll do a telehealth session.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the sort of talking therapies that made that switch. Physios and osteos and people that would be, you'd think is entirely manual therapy, all did it.
Like it forced them to find a way as well to deliver their services.
Yeah. And so it just completely changed the trajectory. And we initially thought telehealth is going to do that over COVID, and then it's going to like drop right back. And so we were investing in it, but we were also being careful about, okay, we're working on the theory this will be a temporary, right? But no, it just grew and grew. And so we invested more and more, and now it's a core part of our platform. And recently, like when we ran the stats on how many telehealth sessions, because we were working out some stuff about how much scope we need to have, we actually didn't even believe our own numbers. When we first looked at it, we thought, we actually went back to, with some people in our team that do
run it again.
We were like, that can't be right. Like, is it? And it was just so many sessions are happening, right? It's just thousands of sessions that are being run every day that are telehealth, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like it's great because people are getting services that perhaps they wouldn't have gotten if you live in a rural area, a remote area. You can get services. You don't need to have broadband internet, via cable. You can get Starlinks.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So a bunch of factors all at once, and then that's where that is. The talk all now in terms of where things are going is around the question about what AI. What's that going to do? And I think it is moving so fast. I've got some ideas. They'll probably be dated and wrong, in 3 months, right?
Yeah.
But
like broadly, as this big machine of healthcare and the digitization of that kind of thing, like what this way is it going? Yeah.
I think there's probably going to be a few things. So there will be, I think, the capacity to better analyze what works and what doesn't, right? In treatment, right? So I think most things are becoming more data driven, and when health in a way has been a little bit immune to that, or some pockets of health, I think we're going to see a lot more focus on that. And with AI, you get an easier ability to kind of analyze data, analyze trends, pick up things. So I think we're going to see that. We're also likely to see, I think, at least initially, more AI-assisted treatment, right? So rather than, there's a fear about AI taking over the roles of a lot of health providers. I think that's probably some way off, but there will be AI assisted, where you're getting a perspective from AI that is going to be more immune to the human sort of distortions,
Yeah.
in the way that we might interpret things. And I think that human element is both a strength, right? But it also is a vulnerability, right? And there's good information out there about, for instance, what's better at predicting a heart attack. If someone presents to an emergency department, is it the subjective experience of the clinician on who is assessing the person, or can you use an algorithm to better predict? And the algorithm typically outperforms
the human.
Yeah, the human, because the human is distorted by things like, if you see a middle-aged, overweight male who's sweating, right? That's going to distort, because there are some risk factors to do with that, but the extent to which someone might distort that, right, in their mind in assessing, is different. Where if you had a woman in her 30s or 40s that presented, but doesn't have any of those other characteristics, are likely to be rated at much lower risk, when in fact statistically that may not at all be true. So I think with AI-assisted treatment, we're going to perhaps be able to use that more, to sort of help inform, decision making and get a different kind of perspective.
So have you leveraged AI into your product with your statistic gathering and that kind of thing?
Not yet.
Okay.
And we are looking at different ways that we will implement and utilize AI. One of the reasons that we haven't is because the privacy and safety element, right, is something that we want to be extremely kind of careful about. And we're also firmly believe that there is a risk, if it wasn't done in the right way and with the right sort of precautions, is that you could end up in a situation where the data is actually being misused to train AI models on how to do treatment, right? And so that's not, the way that we see it. That's not that's not something that we're it's not our the data we're looking after for other people. It's not our sort of data to utilize in ways like that, right? So we are sort of very careful in terms of what we do that genuinely provides tools, and we can leverage AI to help our customers and help patients. But we need to make sure that there isn't a way that opens a door to it being utilized in a way that our customers would find unacceptable, and understandably so, right? And we saw there's missteps with some companies where they rushed in, not necessarily competitors, so I'm not throwing shade on competitors and holding ourselves up in some light, but some missteps from some extremely large companies that said, "Oh, we're going to use AI to do this." And when you read the fine print of it all, and oh yes, it is being used to train these models, right? And so ultimately taking intellectual property, right, the content of meetings and things, and turning it into a training tool, which then, well, who owns that then? And who will then leverage that, right? And so there's a whole lot of complex things that are outside just the patient confidentiality and all those sort of fairly obvious things about privacy that really need to be considered. So we have part of our team that are on it, and they're researching it. We're looking at different ways that we can implement it in a really helpful and safe way, so that we can get people tools to help them do certain tasks and things. But we're being very cautious.
Tread lightly.
Yeah, just lightly, and it's something that AI is going to be around for a long time. We don't feel a need where it's something that is a new and unknown and contains some risk to say, well, we're going to be the first to market to to get AI looking at everything and giving because the risk of doing that means that you can't put the genie back in the bottle,
that's
right?
it. Once it's out, it's out.
It's out, right? So we're all over it. We're excited about AI. We think it's got amazing potential, but we're taking a cautious approach.
Nice. Are there any client success stories that really stick out to you? And what were the outcomes like from them?
Yeah, I can think of a few. I've got to be careful in not identifying them, because we're big on, of course, on privacy given the nature of the content. But what we see, and this is actually one of our favourite kind of customer groups, right? We'll see practices that when they start with us, they're usually 1 or 2 people with an idea, and they'll start their practice, and we're often, we're involved at that very early stage, and they'll be talking to us and what they're trying to do, and our team will be supporting them in setting it up and configuring their account and so forth. And then you watch those customers grow, and you watch them grow in a way that is sustainable and healthy, because you can grow health practices fairly easily in a really unhealthy way, right? And what that is, and people who fall into this trap, is where they'll just try and get more practitioners on board. They don't have good systems in place, so the admin, the paperwork, the stuff just gets sort of out of hand. And because of all that's inefficient, which means that they don't actually make any money either, right?
Right.
So there's sort of like a vanity metric of either total revenue or how many clinicians they have in their health practice. But actually, usually the owners are working really hard. They're making marginally more than if they were just working solo themselves and didn't take all the risk and didn't have all the stress and all. Right. So when you see that, if we see that and people are open to, we like to be able to actually help and have some ideas and suggestions. But the success stories are where you see people that they start off small like that, and they grow and they utilize and they leverage the technology that's available to really deliver a service and grow in a way that keeps them, genuinely they're happy and they're motivated. The other success story that I really like is customers that come to us. So we have a data input team, which is a function that we decided we'd prioritize a long time ago. They'll import data from competitors into PowerDiary, and they'll do it for free, right? So if someone wants to come to PowerDiary, we will say, that's fine, give us the data that you've got, and we've got a whole bunch of people that are very, very smart with data, much smarter than I am with this stuff, right? And they will transform the data and get it in. What is great is when you see someone that's come from a system that maybe has been left behind somewhat, they really haven't sort of developed it. And the customer comes, to us because they're frustrated with various things. And then you see them just take off, right? And they come and they once they get, usually takes a few weeks or something to kind of just get used to it because they're used to doing things one way. And then you get the feedback from them, like, oh, this is amazing. And they'll sometimes share specific things with us, like just, they'll say that, I've got twice the size of the team, and I've got the same number of admin. Like, I've been able to double the business without needing to double the admin staff, right? Or things like their no-show rates, that no-shows are deadly to health businesses. It's where, you've got an appointment booked and the patient doesn't turn up. Wasted time. You can't bill for it, or you have a no-show fee, but that money's gone, right? So we have a bunch of things that really helps reduce no-shows, right? And helps with payment collection as well, right? Because we know people they're often embarrassed if they owe money and all that. So we've got a way that by integrating with online processing, people can just get sent a link, they don't have to log in, they can just put their card in, pay their outstanding bill without having the embarrassment. So when you see people come from another platform, they come to us, and there's a lot of trust that we're going to be better than their previous, and then when you see them, really succeed, and it's coming from them, we're not like prompting them to tell us nice things, but you just sort of see it, and that's what it's all about, right? Is when that happens. And the other thing that is great about like customers that have used other platforms, they are the most positive, right? Because people that have always been with PowerDiary, that's what
all they know.
That's all they know, right? And we try and really, go above and beyond where we can. Like with our customer support and with, if there's a bug or if there's something that we try and fix it really fast and all the rest of it. But if people don't have a frame of reference, right, then it's like, well, that's what everyone does, right? And it's funny, we even see it play out sometimes on Facebook or something where, someone who hasn't used any other system, and maybe we've had something that's gone wrong, but we've like, got onto it, we've fixed it, and then someone might be complaining about that, like and then you'll see other people jump on and say, "You clearly have not used any other platforms, right?" Like,
you don't need to come out and defend yourself. All your clients will jump on your back straight away.
Totally, and that is so like we try not to get into it like with it, like, and we just kind of leave it, and we'll respond if they've got a question, or we might explain something if we can provide some more information. But we try not to get into, because it just seems silly and you seem defensive and all that, and the person's frustrated. So, but when other people do it, we're like, oh, that, it might be what you're thinking, like going, but it's lovely to see that, and it's a good feeling when you're making a difference, and people
clearly love your product.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you deal with the transition? Like, you're setting out to be a psychologist. Now you're a CEO of a tech company.
Yeah.
How was that transition for you? Because did you realize this is actually more your calling, or psychology is still more your calling? Like, what was that transition like for you?
It was gradual. So as Power Diary started to grow, I would find that it sort of came back to this idea of like how many people we could sort of impact, right? And it was sort of like a progression. So I would think about it as a psychologist and practicing, I could see X number of sort of patients and hopefully make a positive difference to them. And that would, to me, is very rewarding in doing that work. But then we're like, well, we could do this like on a bigger scale with a practice, right? Which is where my wife, who's a psychologist also, we're like, instead of us just individually seeing clients, and then that's sort of the circle of influence, if you like, is going to be fairly small. Why don't we we'll start a practice, we'll get other people in as well who have aligned values about how to provide treatment in a way that, that we feel strongly about. So we did that, and that was great, because then we're having that kind of impact. But then organically, as the software started to kind of grow, and then we started to see really that, well, when you've got really good software, you can run a practice better, you can grow, it's sustainable, you don't have people burning out, because that's a problem in the health sector, people burn out and leave. So you actually keep people in the health sector. And it was really a continuation of that thinking of, well, actually, this is another way to have a bigger circle of influence, again, in that if we can genuinely solve a problem that allows other people to provide better treatment. So the psychologically, the transition was like that. In a practical way, it was slow, like over time, and I changed the ratio of, so at the start, like I'm seeing patients in and out, all day. And then as Power Diary started to grow, I'm like, I need a little bit of time. So I'd like have one appointment a day that I'd keep free, so I can do Power Diary things or do a demonstration. Then I'd get home and I'd just work all night on Power Diary. So, and then bit by bit, just progress and change the, ratio from mainly clinical work and to a little bit. And then as time went on, okay. And eventually it got to a point where, because we were all, as Power Diary was growing, we had some stuff offsite, like remote, but we were having a lot of our team were in our psychology office. So the psychology practice was growing. And then we had Power Diary staff wherever we could fit, in. And so
every spare inch of the place,
yeah, it got to a point where it was actually causing problems because there was so much then activity happening, and the psychologist I just need quiet space to be able to think between my appointments, and the Power Diary staff are like, hey, I'm on the phone, I need to, So that was great. So then we moved. So I took and we opened up a little office that was just for Power Diary. And my wife stayed at the practice, and she's actually a much better practice manager than I am. Right? So she actually took and really ran the core parts of the practice. So we had that actually for 14 years, the practice. So we only sold it last year.
Wow.
So we've that grew, and that was a really nice. That was a great, good fun and really great team of people there. So, but yeah, we ran that the whole time, and then from there, as Power Diary grew and grew, then
Because like as a, you go to uni and do the study to be a psychologist, then the set of skills I would imagine is a little bit different to be, running a company, especially like it's a tech company. It's not like a really close group thing of skills, that kind of thing. How did you find that did you just naturally have the skills like to run power dryers in that way, or like a company in that way?
I think a limited range of skills, yes, right. And there's a whole lot of things I don't do really well, right? Now, and then when we were small, essentially that meant that those whole lot of things just weren't done very well.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So as we got, as we grew and we got bigger, essentially we would recruit for the things that either Paul or myself weren't good at. So we might have been doing, so he was very good with technology, very good with things. I could really understand what practices needed, could sort of look at something and look at what's efficient, not efficient, and what would help people, be able to run more smoothly. And but a whole lot of other things to do with like organization, graphic design, all that sort of stuff. I had some ideas, but it was not and is not my strength. So as we grew, it's always been about finding people that can do things much better than I can, and or much better than Paul can, and that's really like the way Power Diary is now. It's a function of everyone's contribution and putting in. It's not, and we all have different roles that we kind of play in that, but it's a little bit, I think, like an orchestra or something. That isn't one instrument that's like carrying the orchestra. It's that kind of combination that creates it. And so we're always looking for people that have a different perspective or that can do stuff much better than we can. And then we don't always get it right. Like we've had, we've got overall we've got a very good retention of our team long term, but sometimes you get it wrong, but that's learning, but that's really how it happens. So, I'd like to say that I've become extra skilled in all these areas, but some things, of course, I've improved with practice and you learn, but there's the whole lot of stuff that I wasn't good at before. I'm probably still not very good at it now. Right? But what happens with a team around you, then you get those weaknesses that you've got, they cause you less and less problems, right? And they don't hold you back, and that's great because
I like that, like when people realize that instead of trying to, say you're really good with people, right, but you're really bad on the tech side or whatever, to bring your tech skill up to your people skills. The learning curve is so massive, it's not even worth it. Just lean into the ones that you're really good at, and then, like you're saying, like just get someone else to do the other part. It's way easier. And everyone then is the specialist that fulfills the orchestra, like you said.
Totally. And we have a sort of internal thing that we say about when we're recruiting and is what's this person's superpower, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because you don't need people that everyone is well-rounded and does everything well, right? But you do need to really take something to a different level. Each person needs to be able to do something or be very good at a particular thing, right? And then you can build together the right combination. But what you're describing there too is about a strengths-focused model. So when we think of it in psychology terms, it's about a strengths focus, right? And that very much aligns with how I think even with patients, right, that come in, that unless someone doesn't enjoy something and is not good at it, unless there's a real reason, like it's causing functional impairment to their life that they need to address it.
It's pointless to go after it.
For that same effort, that person can be amazing at something else, and you can put the effort into that which they enjoy and they're good at. So you're going to, and then that person's going to be a lot happier, a lot more fulfilled, and getting a lot more positive feedback from the world because their talents, is allowed to shine. Whereas trying to patch over, like when I used to do a lot of sort of executive coaching and manager coaching and stuff when I was working, companies or government or whatever would send managers and things that might have been struggling, right? And universally, that was one of the things that you could see. They'd be in a role where they felt that they had to be good at all these different things, you know, and they wouldn't necessarily even feel comfortable to say, you know, I'm good at this, but I'm terrible at this, right? Even though there's the resources around them often with HR and with other, you know, so often it was around getting people to identify, yeah, hey, what are you good at? And what can you outsource?
Sure.
And so you're not banging your head against the wall all the time.
Well, I'd like to finish on something else that I don't know if you're good at or not, but a niche thing is like, what do you love about mountain biking? Where have you gone? Because I've recently been shooting. I've done some mountain biking myself, and I've recently been shooting some professional, and these guys, nutcases, man. We rock up to this, I did this shoot the other week. We rock up to the track on the Gold Coast, and I knew that they could do flips and all the crazy stuff, but just when it's like, we've been there for 5 minutes, and these are massive jumps, and I'm there shooting it, and they just send it on the second time. I'm like, I wasn't ready for that. So like, dude, where's like your favorite place to bike?
Okay.
And
the I would say that my mountain bike has followed like this, right? In terms of the extremeness and severity, and I would say that tracks along with like my brain development, right?
Right.
So,
which part of the bell curve you are?
Exactly right. So years ago, when my frontal lobes, which is where we have good judgment, right?
You're right.
When that wasn't quite so well developed, right, and I hadn't had various injuries from other sorts of things, then I would like have a go at anything, right? And luckily where I am in Victoria, it's quite hilly, quite mountainous. There's some amazing tracks, and I would spend, like, even growing up, I grew up in that sort of area. That's where I'd spend all the time. As time has gotten on, I've got a little bit older, and I've found like injuries, you know, if injuries require surgery, you know that you sort of, so I've dialed back some of that. And now I'm not going to impress anyone. Like if I'm out there with you know, real mountain bike riders that like you're describing, I'm gonna be very unimpressive. But I enjoy it. Like I enjoy it because it's got that kind of, you got to be in the moment, right? Like you can't. Yeah, you
gotta
have
switch off, be present. If you think of anyone else, you'll mess it up or stack it or whatever. Have you been on any wild tracks throughout the world or anything like that?
No, I've done most of the stuff has been in Australia, and nothing too crazy. In fact, the worst injury I ever had was not even mountain biking. It was in a giant water slide in Switzerland.
Right.
So, you know, the silly stuff on the mountain bike, but no, that was the worst injury I ever had. Was I got a neck injury going down this sort of drop. And that I would have thought would be one of the least dangerous things, you know, that I've done. So you never know. But I like the other thing I like about mountain biking, and someone taught me very early on. There was a thing they said, like, only look where you want to go, right? Don't look where you don't want to go, because you'll end up there. You know what it's like. You're on something really where it's a drop on either side, and if you look down on either side,
you're going to the drop.
That's it. You're gone, right? You have to keep your eye in front, and I think that parallels really nicely. Like, you know, if you get caught up in your head about, you know, in life or in work, you know, you get caught up in where you could end up. Like, you know, if you misstep, you know, inevitably your brain, it's almost like subconsciously keeps taking you, you know, there.
Have you seen that image? It's like a meme, I guess, where it's like a picture. I think it's Michael Phelps swimming, and then it's got the dude that's coming second, looking to the side. And Phelps is swimming, looking straight ahead. It's like winners focus on winning, losers focus on the winner.
On that,
kind of thing. Like just like that. There is nothing else.
Yeah.
That is it. That's all I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And I think like that. I know it's just a meme kind of thing, but it is so powerful when you look at it like that, because you even look at the guy's face going, oh, how come, instead of just, this is it.
Yeah, that's right. And I take the same view with how you look at competitors, because we'd have people from when we were one of the first sort of movers, right, so that were doing cloud-based, right, and there are stacks of them there right now. And in the early days, you know, you'd see someone into the market, and I'd get a bit anxious about it. You know, I think, oh, like, and are they doing this better, or you've got a different, and then realize, like, you just focus on doing the best thing that you know how, right, and just double down on that, and the chips will fall where they fall, right. So if you just keep listening to customers, keep making a better product, then what competitors do is up to them, you know. And so I've found over the years now, like don't pay much attention at all, right? Because of that very thing. Like, it just takes focus off. Even if they're doing something different, that's not necessarily going to say it's right. Like, if you think we're not doing that, there's a reason.
Yeah.
But it can get distracting if they're doing something, and you end up So quite a long time ago now, I've sort of just become more disciplined of like, well, let's see.
Yeah.
And
we're going to keep doing our thing. They
exactly.
can do our thing, and
yeah,
whoever's at the winning at the end.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Well, thanks, man, for your time. And like I said, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. There's so much stuff you said. I'm like, can we just chill on that? But yeah, thanks, man.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
Great.
No, thank you.
And be keen to do this again sometime.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you.
Awesome.
That's good.